Welcome fans of great rock and roll to Music is a Journey. I'm Peter Scove and this is part 2 of my look at the band Sloan, a kind of quick review of their discography and a more rambling cover of their history. Alright, before I get started with part 2, I just want to make some corrections to some mistakes that I made in part 1. Alright, like when I make these videos, I sit down and I've got about 40-50 minutes to just blab really quickly and then shut everything down again, and I'm pulling stuff out of my head, some things I've known about for 20 years or more, and on that moment I get some things wrong. I get names wrong, I get dates wrong, and I just say the wrong stuff. So I want to correct this because, I think it is my favorite band and I'm making mistakes. So here we go. Let's make some corrections here. First of all, I talked about the band that Chris Murphy and Jay Ferguson were in before Sloan, Carney Lake Road. I said Killarney Lake Road, which is really stupid because I've known about Carney Lake Road for probably over 20 years. I've been to the road, Carney Lake Road. Anyway, in that video I did actually put a correction on the bottom saying it's Carney Lake Road, not Killarney Lake Road, which is what I was saying, and I showed a map, so I kind of tried to cover my tracks there a little bit. However, I said that for I Am the Cancer, the song I Am the Cancer on the Smeared album, and I Can Feel It from the Twice Removed album, I said that it was Laura Borealis who was doing vocals. And actually I don't think it could have been, because I think Laura is actually an author, not a singer. So it was actually Jennifer Pierce. Jennifer Pierce is the person who appears as female vocals there for I Am the Cancer and I Can Feel It. And Jennifer Pierce was a member of an all-girls band out of Halifax called Jail. And I think I read that Jail was the second Canadian band ever to sign to Sub Pop, or the second band out of Halifax, maybe, I forget. But anyway, Jail had 2 albums and an EP. Jennifer was with that. So anyway, she's the one who was the guest, not Laura Borealis. But there was a song about Laura Borealis on the Twice Removed album called Shame Shame. Shame Shame, You Couldn't Say Your Girlfriend's Name, go the lyrics, and it is about Laura. And again, I think she was an author. I think she wrote a book called Dames Dames, which is also mentioned in that song. Anyway, another mistake was I was going to talk about Jay's song Snowsuit Sound from Twice Removed, and I talked about it, except that at the beginning I said the song is called Deeper Than Beauty. If you were paying attention, I had already talked about the song Deeper Than Beauty, so why would there be another version that was completely different? So anyway, I meant to talk about Jay's song Snowsuit Sound and Hold On To Your Hand. Okay, so that's what all that was about, Snowsuit Sound. It does have a pretty cool chorus though. Anyway, another thing was I talked about Sloan were signed with BGM. There is no such thing as BGM. Well, in Japan, BGM stands for background music, but that's not it. The record label was BMG. I suddenly said BGM. It's BMG they were signed to for a bit there. Okay, and I think, I did some background information about what Jay and Chris were doing before Sloan. I didn't really cover what Andrew and Patrick were doing. However, I checked the Wikipedia entry for Patrick recently and found that there's a lot of information about different bands he was in prior to joining Sloan, and the actual part of him with Sloan is very short. So in this case here, look, there's just a lot of information out there about the band, not just Wikipedia. You can find tons of interviews both on YouTube as well as interviews with magazines and so on. I mean, it's over 30-year history, so there's a lot of stuff out there. So in this case here, I would just say, if you want to know more details, and hopefully without all the mistakes, do your own research. That's what the anti-vaxxers and the flat earthers say. Do your own research. So I'm telling you, okay. But I'm still going to try to get it as right as I can. All right, so now that's it for my mistakes. Let's get on with the rest of the video. And let's see if I can put together another little intro. I got a copyright claim, but I didn't get blocked. So that's cool. Let's try to do another one. Here we go. Oh yes, and by the way, Steady arrived. I've listened to it about 6 or 7 times now. There's only so much time we can kill here. 13 under a bad sign. If losing this game still won me the Okay, and we're back to get on with the video. And hey, look, I'm wearing my 17-year-old shirt. How do I look in green? I actually have older shirts, but I don't think I properly fit them anymore. Oh well. Okay, so I have a lot to say in this second half of the video, and I've prepared a bunch of notes to make sure I don't forget anything. First of all, one more time, I wanted to mention Sloan's A-Sides win, and the reason why I want to mention it is because I watched a video on the Sea of Tranquility channel, which I often mention, with Pete Pardo, and he had some guests, and they were each going to talk about their 5 favorite power pop bands. And one of the guests on the program was Mike Portnoy, the mighty Mike Portnoy. Technical, progressive metal, heavy metal, progressive rock drummer, right? Formerly of Dream Theater, also played drums with Transatlantic and lots of other stuff. Anyway, his number 3 pick was this album here, and he said that he normally wouldn't pick a full album, however, a compilation album, but he said just he heard this one and then he went and bought the rest of the studio catalog, and he absolutely loves the music of Sloan, which is really cool. And he highly recommended this band, and of course mentioned that everybody writes, everybody sings, and that they change instruments when they're playing live and so on. So that was really cool that Mike Portnoy has become a fan of Sloan. That's really cool. And he said that he got into the band, how he heard about them was in an interesting way. He watched a movie called The Virgin Suicides, and the soundtrack for that movie includes several songs by Sloan. And apparently the soundtrack was compiled by the drummer for Red Cross. So that's really cool, like that there's this connection, you know, to Mike Portnoy and Red Cross and a movie and so on with Sloan's music. So I just wanted to mention that because I think that's really great. Okay, moving on. Actually, while we're talking about movies, I don't remember exactly when it came out, but there was a Canadian movie called Child Star, which was about a child movie actor. And there's a scene where I think it's the child's father, he's actually a musician, and the child has disappeared, he's gone somewhere, and his mother thinks that the father has taken him, so she, through some sequence of events anyway, the FBI or some police force anyway come to the father's house because they think he has abducted the child, when actually he hasn't. But when they come to the father's house and basically break down the door, the father is rehearsing, he's playing trumpet with his band, guitars, bass, drums, and as it so happens that the band is 3 of the members of Sloan, and apparently all 4 were supposed to be there, but I forget who, one of them couldn't make it. I just remember that when the FBI break down the door, Chris Murphy goes leaping behind the sofa. I think it was Andrew and possibly Jay who also go scattering somewhere. But anyway, so Sloan have a cameo appearance in that movie called Child Star. Right, what else is happening? Oh yeah, also, see, I'm going to forget things if I don't consult my list. I want to show you this chart magazine, best, was it 100, best 50? I think it was top 100 albums of all time. But anyway, let's just take a look. Here's a photograph of the page, and you can see slot number 1, there is Sloan with Twice Removed. You can also see Joni Mitchell and Neil Young. You can see down here, here is One Chord to Another, Rush album, and then you can also find Navy Blues is on the list, and Smeared is also on the list. So Sloan's first 4 albums were voted in the top list there by Chart magazine readers, and apparently this happened twice. They also had other polls, like for just best overall artist or best songs, and Sloan figured in the top 5 for all of Chart magazine's lists, so that's pretty cool. Okay, then another thing I wanted to share when we were out in Halifax, my wife had a chance to meet with Mike Murphy, I think his name is. He was is the manager for Sloan, and they had printed some Sloan trading cards. Like this. I think Sloan basically follow... Oh, there's a mosquito passing by! Sloan basically follow what a lot of the classic 70s rock bands did. So they had their double live. They have their album coming up I'm going to mention. But one of the things was that I remember Kiss and also Elvis Presley, there were trading cards of them. But probably it's the Kiss trading cards that influenced Sloan. I used to have a lot of them too. But anyway, they got their own trading cards printed, and of course pictures on the back. When you have the whole set, you make one big scene. This is actually a scene from the video for The Rest of My Life. I believe my wife managed to get the entire collection because Mike Murphy just sent her a whole bunch of packs and said, here, go ahead, take them. I think they were just being sold at gigs, or like I think you had to buy them at the concert anyway. So yeah, he just sent my wife a whole bunch of packs of them, and I think she managed to, maybe she's missing 1 or 2 cards, possibly. But anyway, yeah, maybe almost complete the set. And then I was allowed to keep the doubles, which are actually in a box back here somewhere. I prepared last year when I was originally going to make a Sloan video. So Sloan trading cards, and I think that's about it. So we're up to 2006. Already by this time, all the members have relocated to Toronto. So yeah, and actually that happened a little bit earlier on, but since I was kind of focusing on that, Andrew moved over and so on, I want to just mention that everybody was now relocated in Toronto by already a few years earlier. So let's kick off now from 2006. September 30th, 2006, Sloan released this album here, Never Hear the End of It. It is a double album with 30 tracks. And in the month of September, they released a short video featuring something that they were doing during the recording of each of the tracks. So like each day there was a video featuring a bit of a recording for one of the 30 tracks. So by the time we came to September 30th, the final video was out and the album was released. So this is a double album of 30 tracks, and I was just looking at it again today. I think if you count the normal length songs, like Sloan's songs are basically about 2 to 4 minutes long. Some of them are a little bit longer, some of them can be a little bit more than that, but basically 2 to 4 minutes long. So if you consider that, there's usually 12 songs per album, there's basically 2 full albums on here. The other 6 songs are actually kind of short transitional songs that are about a minute. Most of them are a little bit over a minute. There's one that's just under a minute. Anyway, this is a long track listing here. Everybody, of course, is contributing songs. A lot of short things, as I mentioned. Patrick contributed 4 songs only, the fewest out of everyone, but he also has the longest song on here, I Understand, which is, I think, well over 4 minutes, might even be up to 5 minutes long. But anyway, the lead single off this was Who Taught You to Live Like That? It is a rocking piano J song, really great. There are just a lot of really cool songs on here. One of the ones I really love is Patrick's Listen to the Radio. It's one of those really sad, like, separated from everybody kind of song. I think there's like the line that nothing's gonna grow again for the rest of my life in my world, or something like that. Anyway, there's an interesting one called Fading into Obscurity by Chris, and there's a line something like, and for that matter, this cake is baked, but I much prefer the batter, perhaps because it had so much potential to be delicious and still be influential. I get the feeling he's talking about they had so much potential early on to be a very influential band. But you see, actually, one of the things that's worth pointing out is that during the late 90s and early 2000s, they were an internationally touring band. They have a bootleg live album from Australia in 99. They have one from Tokyo in 2002. As I said before, they'd been to Europe and so on. And I think once they started, first of all, with Andrew having kids, and then Patrick and Chris also later on getting married and having kids, they just decided that it wasn't worth it to spend months and months on the road traveling all around the world, and they decided just to focus more on basically North American tours and just, across Canada and the US basically type of thing. So because of that, in one way it was very smart, because it allows them to not get stressed out from being on the road for such a long time and focus on the band and their families. And I think that's one of the reasons why the 4 of them have stayed together for so long, because they made very smart decisions about protecting, I guess, their sanity, basically. But anyway, lots of other cool songs on here. There's some great J ones, there's some heavy Andrew ones. There's one, the shortest one, it's 56 seconds long, I Can't Sleep. It's back to that kind of aggressive, punkish shoegaze sound, like a kind of harkening back to the early days. Blackout. There's a really cool set on here. Let me see. It's Living with the Masses, which is an Andrew song about being angry about a neighbor who's always got the power tools going. Short, aggressive one. Then HFXNSHC, which stands for Halifax, Nova Scotia Hardcore, which is like just over a minute long, fast-paced punk rock song by Patrick. And then People Think They Know Me, which is a kind of slower, heavier Chris song there, which is really cool. They have like, you'll get like 2 or 3 really cool songs together, and then there'll be like some short transitional bits or some slower songs, and some of the slower songs are really nice. I really love the last one, Another Way I Could Do It. It's one of those like everybody sings along, and it's a good melodic rock song that's just really cool. Some people, okay, there was one guy, I've forgotten his YouTube channel now, but if you search YouTube for Sloan albums ranked, you can probably find it, because there's only one video like that I found. But the guy who did that, he picked this as his #1 album. Now, I recently read on a website, picking the best 5 Sloan albums you should hear. It is the first 4 studio ones and the double live. And then 2 albums to avoid. They said avoid Action Packed, because there's no Andrew on it, and it loses something because of that. I think there's still a lot of good songs on there though. And then avoid this one. Wow. Okay, so I can kind of understand it, because you have, like I said, about 2 albums worth of great songs, but you have all these like short 1-minute transitional things, which feels like just pieces of songs that weren't really developed into a full thing. So they went with this approach. I think it's a kind of artistic approach. I never really had a problem with it, but I can see how you could pick out the 24 proper songs and make 2 albums out of it. But anyway, I'm going to talk a long time about this one, so I already have. So let's move on to the next bit of news. So by this time, Sloan actually opened up their own rehearsal space where they could anytime go in, rehearse, they could even record things. And the interesting thing is that the band has always been, writing, the members each writing their own songs. And as we've mentioned, each of the members are able to play, is able to play at least 2 or 3 different instruments. So once they had their own rehearsal space and studio, it was basically possible for anyone to just go in and record his song on his own and then just teach it to the others for playing live. So a couple of interesting things. Actually, I should mention, for Never Hear the End of It, when this was going on iTunes asked for 2 bonus tracks that would not be available on the CD. So since Patrick had only put 4 songs out of the 30 on here, he did 2 songs by himself going into the studio, using an Andrew drum track and then just putting bass, guitar, keyboards, and his vocals over them. And one of them, I think it's called Even Though You Lied. It's one of those, again, really beautiful, sad songs. So yeah, they're doing their own thing, and that actually reflects in the title of the next album, which is called Parallel Play, which is, I think it's a sociology term for when children are in the same room playing, but they're each doing their own thing and not interacting with each other, which is kind of how Sloan have been working towards recording their songs, like basically, as I said, doing their own thing. We already had Chris already back on the second album doing that song with guitar, drums, and vocals only, which was all him. So it's coming more that way. And there's another change up in the band as well, that from 2006, I guess after the release of Never Hear the End of It, they added a 5th person, Gregory McDonald, who can play keyboards basically, but also he can play guitar and other things. And I think he was in a band, maybe still is in a band called Limblifter, which was a band out of the 90s, Canadian band. Anyway, so they added him as a touring member, and we'll talk a little bit more about him later on. But anyway, to kind of make things less complicated, they have the 5th person on the road now taking over the keyboard duties and some of the extra instrument duties. So here we go with Parallel Play, coming out in 2008. The lead single off of this one was Believe in Me, a Patrick song. I actually, my first impression of this was that it was not as enjoyable as previous albums, But I have since come to realize that there are actually a lot of songs on here I like, so actually it must be a good album. This was actually in a response to Never Hear the End of It, which was a 30-track double album. This is like a 30-minute 12-track album. 13-track album. 13. Yeah. If you think about it, if a prog band does a 30-minute album, it's considered an EP, and there's probably only 2 songs on it. But anyway, Compact, there's some really cool ones. Emergency 911 is an Andrew song. I think he's kind of getting mad about police cars and fire engines driving up and down his road. Burn For It is a really cool Patrick one. Witch's Wand, there was a video for that. That's a Jay song. There's another really cool one on here that I liked. It was I'm Not a Kid Anymore, a Chris song. Basically about growing up and being interested in rock music and becoming an adult. And there's one line I remember, he says, "Scariest thing about my Halloween is November rent is due." Cool. Anyway, yeah, basically there are some really neat songs on this one here. So it's actually not a bad album. And the guy who did the ranking of the Sloan albums I mentioned, he actually placed this one fairly high up on the list. So that's Parallel Play from 2008. So the next thing to happen with Sloan was that they opened an online store, and then to kind of celebrate the opening of that store, they released a 5-song EP called the Hit and Run EP, which is 1 song from each of the members and a 5th song by Chris. And there actually was a 6th song, which was not available at the time, but it has since been added to the EP for the Sloan's Bandcamp page. So there is actually a 6th song, but at the time it was a 5-song EP, download only. And the reason why it was called the Hit and Run EP was Jay has been doing radio shows. I think they've mostly, Jay, Chris, and Patrick have been doing radio shows or club DJing or something like this. But anyway, Jay had a show and Chris was on the show with him. And then they finished up the show and Chris left early and Chris was going home by bicycle. And then shortly after that, Jay wrapped up and then he went home by bicycle, and then he saw somebody lying on the road, obviously someone who had been struck by a car. So he went over to see who it was and help the person, and it turned out it was Chris. Chris had been struck by a drunk driver running through a light, and he was unconscious, I think it was, or in very bad shape anyway. Obviously he recovered and he's fine, but that was how the EP got titled the Hit and Run EP. Wow, huh? Okay. And there's an interesting song on there too by Patrick. At the end of the song, you hear a small child's voice crying out, "Da, da, da." Like, that's his son. That was kind of interesting. Okay, then what? Let's see, Hit and Run. Then in 2010, also available on their website, was the B-Sides Win, which is a companion to the A-Sides Win, only this time it's all the obscure tracks, the B-sides, the rarities, and that kind of thing. So the songs that appeared on the Japanese releases, as well as other songs that were kind of rarities at the time back in the day. So we can hear some of the songs that were recorded around the Peppermint time, as well for Smeared, the bonus tracks, for Twice Removed and One Chord to Another, and basically all of those tracks plus some extra ones that I'd never heard of before. I in particular was interested in hearing those older ones. I think there's one called Amped, there's Pillow Fight, there's Sleepover. There were a few of them, and in fact there's actually one, I forget the name of it now, Stove and Drat. Suffocate and Stove? No. Anyway, it actually is not available on any of the band's download stuff, but it was included as a rare bonus track on the David Geffen DGC Rarities album, which also included Weezer and Nirvana and Hole and a few other ones anyway. But yeah, anyway, so that was the B-Sides Win, which basically had the same motif as the A-Sides Win, except it was in black. And that album, actually now, if you look at the Bandcamp page, it's not available. Instead, they have 2 B-Sides Win versions. They have a 90s version and a 2000s version. And I think some of the tracks that were on that previous, like, monster version were not included on there now. So I don't know if you can still find it out there somewhere. Okay, that is 2010. Then we reach 2011, the band's 20-year anniversary, and they come out with The Double Cross. This album is really good. I think it is the best one, in my opinion, the best album since Pretty Together, or even Between the Bridges. Not as good as Between the Bridges, but it's really good. And I've read very good reviews about this. Other reviewers saying also that it's pretty amazing that 20 years into the band's career, they put out this album. It's called The Double Cross because the Roman numerals for 20 is XX, right? But also, it is their 10th album, which I guess would be the Single Cross. But anyway, it opens with 3 tracks: Follow the Leader by Chris, The Answer Was You by Jay, and Unkind by Patrick. Unkind became a single with a video. These 3 songs segue together and it works just beautifully. Like Follow the Leader, you have the regular song, and then coming at the end of it, it suddenly changes like it's going into another song, but still it's lyrically related to the song, and it goes with this other pace, and then it, keeping the same pace, it changes key, which then brings us into The Answer Was You, the Jay song. It's really cool how they transitioned that. And then Jay's song ends, and then we hear this kind of like droning melodic guitar sound, which leads into Unkind, the Patrick song. These 3 together is just such a great set. Let's see here. Green Gardens, Cold Montreal is just Jay on acoustic guitar only. It's really beautiful. It's great. I love it. And there's some other really cool ones on here too. Your Daddy Will Do is a kind of fun 70s sounding, that again, that 70s kind of, jangly guitar bit and strings coming in, giving it almost a disco feel. That's a Chris one. And then actually one called Traces, an Andrew one. First of all, I like it, but the interesting thing is that the drums in that song just keep the same beat through the whole thing. And I think there are 2 cymbal crashes introducing a transition to the music. But basically it's just this through the whole song, which is really kind of interesting because Sloan have some very cool drumming on some of their songs, especially during the Navy Blues and Between the Bridges, right? But yeah, interesting that they will go ahead and do something like that. So, very good, strong 10th album, The Double Cross from 2011. So now in 2012, they re-released Twice Removed as a triple vinyl or as a download, no CD, including the original album as well as demos for the songs, and then some other working demos under different titles, plus some other songs that never made the album. And they went ahead and did this also for One Chord to Another later on, and then also Navy Blues as well. And the interesting thing I found was, I actually really checked this out the other day, there are a lot of songs on the One Chord to Another deluxe reissue and Navy Blues reissue that were never recorded, never appeared on the album. We hear some songs that are demos of songs we know. There are also demos with a different working title of songs that we know. Sometimes the lyrics are different, but we can still recognize them. But One Chord to Another and Navy Blues have these completely other songs. They could have made almost like an entirely different One Chord to Another, and at least half of an entirely different Navy Blues. But the interesting thing I feel is that the direction was going more into a 60s pop type sound. And Navy Blues is more of a 70s rock, hard rock sound. So it's almost like the band was starting to move in one direction and then just suddenly went another way. And that way seems to be very successful because a lot of people have a lot of praise for Navy Blues. And again, that's the one that made me think, okay, I love this band. I don't need another copy of Smeared, They're really on the right track now. I'm really impressed. So anyway, just it's really interesting to note that now, and I never knew that because just listening to the albums as they are, you kind of feel like, oh, the band's doing this and they're doing this, and then they're going this way, and you never knew, unless you knew about those songs, that there was a potential for them to have gone in another direction entirely. So I have purchased all those songs from iTunes to listen to finally, huh? Okay, that is about those reissues. I also mentioned that they have these, like a bootleg recorded on cassette, during concerts. They have one from 1993 somewhere in North America, and then a 1991 from Australia and a 2002 one from Japan. You can buy the downloads of those albums on their Bandcamp page as well. Let me see here. In 2013, they recorded 3 hardcore punk-like songs. I still don't understand if they are covers or they are Sloan originals inspired by the hardcore punk scene of the 80s. But as I said before, at least 3 of them, if not all of them, were into the hardcore punk scene of the 80s. And so they decided to record these songs. 2 of them have now been made available for purchase on the Bandcamp page. And the 3rd one I heard on YouTube. Anyway, but yeah, very interesting. I kind of wish they'd do a little bit more of that, actually. But anyway, this should bring up the point then also about charity. So this reissue as a download of these 2 songs, the proceeds go for Black Lives Matter in Toronto. And then they also did a song around 2012, 12 Days of Christmas. Sloan singing the 12 Days of Christmas. And the proceeds from the sales of that single would also go to, I don't remember, but one of the charities anyway, also around Toronto. So they are involved in a little bit of charity work as well. Okay, that brings us up to 2014. And another album, original album. So this is an album called Commonwealth, and you will maybe notice that this album does not include a picture of the band on the front. After Smeared, every album includes the band's picture. However, there is 4 kings here. King of Diamonds actually has a likeness of Jay. King of Hearts has a likeness of Chris. King of Spades, actually look at that. It's not a club, 3-leaf club, it's a 4-leaf clover. And I guess it's because Patrick was born in Ireland. And the spades over here, this is Andrew. Yeah, you can see the picture as I'm talking here then. Anyway. Yeah, I think Andrew is spades because he had a song where he said it's time to call a spade, and Andrew is from Ireland, so he gets a 4-leaf clover. Chris writes a lot of songs about relationships and love, and Jay mentions diamonds somewhere, I'm sure. But anyway, the items that are on the cover have some relationship to the songs. And for example, there are dice down here with the total number of 13. That's because Patrick has a song on here called, let's see here, 13 Under a Bad Sign. There's actually a postcard, you can't see all of it, of 3 sisters, some mountains in the Rockies. Jay has a song called 3 Sisters. And yeah, there's just all these little things here that are related to the different songs. Now, this is also a double album. And, oh, I just noticed there's a joker on the back that looks like Gregory MacDonald. The guy I told you who was going with them on tour. That's kind of curious. Funny, I never noticed that before. But anyway, again, they did a double album, and this time they did it something interesting. Way back in like 2001, I remember when Pretty Together came out and I was roaming the Sloan fan pages and so on. Many people were saying, since all 4 of you write, what are the chances of each of you doing a solo album like Kiss did? And at the time they said, well, you know, Kiss were a huge multi-million selling band. Of course, each of them could do an album and they could still sell like hundreds of thousands of copies. Sloan are not that big, so it wouldn't really be feasible for each of them to make an album and sell because they probably wouldn't sell as many. But anyway, it seems that they decided to try something similar by doing a double album where everybody gets a side. And basically it's about 15 minutes. I think Patrick's is the shortest. He has 4 songs and I think it's like just under 12 minutes. Jay and Chris each have 5 songs. It's up around 14, 15 minutes. And then Andrew has one side of just one song, 17 minutes and 49 seconds long. And it's actually no coincidence that it's that long because he insisted on having it 17 minutes and 49 seconds because Halifax was founded or established as a town in 1749. Now, I remember in the video, that live touring video that I mentioned in my previous video that Sloan did, Andrew was commenting on how many bits of songs he had. He had all these pieces. And so he, for this song, it's called 44 Portraits, he put all the pieces together, as well as this a revisit to a song from Between the Bridges. Yeah, so he's just assembled all these bits. And some parts are heavy and some parts have some brass and some part have some strings, and there's also like a kids choir type thing. I think it's the Sloan kids anyway singing in it and so on. He's got his dogs barking at the beginning as well. It's quite interesting, and there's one lyric in there where he says WWLRD. And I always thought, I wonder what that is. Is that a radio station? But I found out the other day that WWLRD stands for What Would Lou Reed Do? And apparently he wrote that lyric around the time that it was announced that Lou Reed had passed away. Bit of trivia there again. Anyway, one thing they said was that they thought it was really cool, like this late in their career, it's already their 11th album and over 20 years in their career, that they would release a 17-minute long song. And actually when they went on tour, they actually even started out with that song when they were playing, smaller venues of diehard Sloan fans. So Chris was saying it was kind of them being obnoxious. But anyway, I think it's neat. Some really great songs on here. I actually really love Jay's Cleopatra, as well as You've Got a Lot on Your Mind, and the little slow, I got a hard to see this here, Neither Here Nor There is just a short acoustic ballad type thing. Really nice, but Cleopatra's my favorite one. Chris, Carried Away, that's a song I could just listen to over and over again. Really catchy pop melody, but nicely done. Some other really cool ones there. 13 Under a Bad Sign by Patrick. What does it say here? Take It Easy. There's actually a badge here that says Take It Easy. Take It Easy is kind of curious because 13 Under a Bad Sign has got this kind of like mean guitar sound, and 13 under a bad sign, whatever. And then Take It Easy is a little bit more upbeat but has the same sound and same beat basically, and it's kind of curious that they would put two very similar sounding songs back to back. That usually doesn't happen. But anyway, so that is Commonwealth. Lots of great songs on here, but the one thing that people say, and that even the band themselves have said, is having all songs by one person, like 5 Jay songs, 5 Chris songs, 4 Patrick songs, doing it like that, it's not a typical Sloan album. Sloan albums, basically each member will have 4 songs in a block. So you have 4 songs, 4 songs, 4 songs, and in each set of 4 will be one song by each of the 4. Not necessarily always in the same order, but that's how they usually try to do it. So this breaks that up. And great songs, but is it really good that they did it that way? There seems to be some divided opinions on it, and Chris was saying maybe that wasn't really the best way to do it in the end, in hindsight. But anyway, it's still, once again, new Sloan album, new songs to the catalog, more great material to listen to. I like it. So I think somewhere around this time, Gregory MacDonald actually started having a role in the studio as well. He's still not, the Sloan is the 4 principals, as Chris puts it, the original 4. They're doing all the writing, but I think they started having Gregory in the studio by this time to actually not just play what they told him to play, but I think he's actually started to be able to contribute a little bit, if I understand that correctly. So 2018 comes 12, their 12th album. Now, Chris kind of is not really keen on calling the album 12. He thinks it sounds kind of lame in a way. Originally the title was Essential Services, but there is actually a song on here of that title, and one thing is that Sloan albums never have a song with the same title as the title of the album. So if they'd called this one Essential Services with the song Essential Services, that would be the first time that ever happened. Opening track, Spin Our Wheels. Again, this is more of a guitar album. Other albums, they can step away from, different guitar sounds, a clean acoustic guitar or electric. There'll be like strings and different organ and all sorts of different things. This one is a little bit more focused on the electric side. And Spin Our Wheels is just this great power pop electric song. We also got one here, Right to Roam. That's a Jay one. Again, very typical of Jay. Jay's songs always have a kind of sophistication to the lyrics. I always feel he's like that older kid. If you're in university, he's the guy who's already graduated a few years ago. If you're in your early 30s, he's in his late 30s. And he always seems to have a little bit more experience than the people he's singing about. And there's always things about like reading something or classic books and classic movies or references to travel and so on. So he always has this kind of more sophisticated sound to him. Maybe that's why he's the diamond. I don't know. But anyway, Right to Rome was a great one. And then The Day Will Be Mine is a really cool Patrick one, where basically Patrick is talking about a lot of his how he feel about his insecurities, but basically he's going to have his day where everything's going to be great. He says, one day I'll wake up new and knowing, you'll see how I'm glowing and the day will be mine. It's a really positive song, a kind of way of him dealing with, anyway, some of those insecurities he has. I really like Patrick. I think he's great. And then there's one here, 44 Teenagers. It's an Andrew song that closes the album. Starts off like a lot of Andrew's songs have these typical, like there's some electric guitar, acoustic guitar, piano, just all moving together, opening the songs. But partway through, it suddenly transitions into this really cool guitar riff, and the song closes out there with that guitar riff going. I think it's really one of those surprise moments. Another, of course, lots of great songs to add to favorite songs. Some people say, I remember one review said that this is a good album, but it's kind of looking in the rearview mirror. There's some kind of references to things they've already done in a way. Another thing is that some people say that Sloan hasn't taken any surprising new leaps. The last few albums have more or less been like they've found their path and basically sticking on it. They might have more electric songs or more acoustic instruments in their songs, but basically it's becoming quite predictable of who's going to be playing what kind of song. Nevertheless, I actually always find songs I really love on the albums, and this is no exception. I actually had in mind to say that the new album after 12 was 13, and I was going to show, here I'll do 13. Black Sabbath's 13. But no. So, let me just see here any other notes. In 2020, Chris did a song on his own called Silence Trumps Lies. I think the title speaks for itself. You can get that off the band's Bandcamp page. And yeah, I guess we're going to move on now to the latest album, Steady, just released here in the near the end of October anyway. The band's 13th full-length studio album. I love it. Already 7 out of the 12 songs are songs that I would put into my list of I can listen to anytime Sloan songs. The opening one, Magical Thinking, it's got this really cool, like the guitar and the rhythm have like this da 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 da, like kind of rhythm like that, and then the vocals have a different rhythm, so you get these two different rhythms working together, and it just has this really cool feel to it. You can actually hear the whole album either on Bandcamp or on YouTube. It's cool. Spend the Day is a Patrick one, which is quite good. She Put Up With What She Put Down is Jay. That's also a good one. Scratch the Surface, there's a video for that. That's a Patrick one. I really like that one. Again, it's got that more hard rock guitar sound. The guitar solo, it's got this like sometimes almost like tortured note sounds, and then some like quick shredding moments on there. It's really cool. Let's see here. Dream It All Over Again is a Jay one. It might now be my favorite song on the album. It's basically Jay, but Chris is singing and Patrick doing backing vocals, and they've got this. What is it? Something like that. Clap, clap, snap, clap kind of thing in the percussion. Sloan actually will include hand claps and finger snaps in the percussion in their recordings. They've always done that, I think, since the second or third album. So keeps going like that. One thing actually I should say about Scratch the Surface in the video. The video is the 4 members doing their own thing. Like Chris is in transit and Patrick is walking and Andrew is painting, and Jay is riding through a park on his bike, and he spies a box that says free records. And the funny thing is, he searches through picking out the records he's going to take, and the record that he puts in the front of his bicycle basket and you see him riding away with is a record by an American pop star, or pop singer anyway, from the late 70s, early 80s, whose name was Jay Ferguson. So I just thought it was really kind of funny that Jay Ferguson is riding with a Jay Ferguson album. One other one that's really cool on here, I Dream of Sleep. It is a short 2-minute country-like song. Very country-ish. which is really unusual. But it's a Chris song about, not being able to sleep. And I think the opening lines, it's like, I think it's, I dream of sleep, I should be tired, I want to see the Sandman fired, which I thought was really good. And then it's like midnight and I'm wide awake, 1, 2 and I'm wide awake, 3, 4 and I'm wide awake. It just has this nice rhythm to it with the 1, 2, 3, 4, which is actually the time during the night. Andrew actually has only 2 songs on this album here, and just because, again, he was kind of busy with things, but they're cool, and especially, was it Close Encounters? Actually, both of them, they have this, Andrew's songs are usually what they call the deep cuts. You kind of have to give them a little bit more of a listen. The lyrics are always, Sloan lyrics, no matter who's writing, always have some kind of message or feeling to them. And Andrew has his own style. Andrew's kind of the one, I feel, who's looking at what's going on around him. And he might be the first person to roll his eyes or throw up his hands and turn around and close the door or have some remark about what's going on anyway. That's what I feel Andrew is often has in his lyrics. So anyway, only 2 there by Andrew, but basically lots of really cool songs on this album. Again, there's basically 7 out of 12 that I love, and the other 5, there's nothing that I will not listen to again. I've played this album already 6 times through. It's great. Now we have to wait another 3 or 4 years for the next one. Alright, so probably this video has also gone on to about 50 minutes, so I think I'm going to wrap it up here. I have said enough, but that's it. That's Sloan, basically their history, not going into too much detail, basically their albums. Every time a new album comes out, I'm reminded that they are one of my, if not my favorite band. Very easy to get into. It's like getting a box of chocolates where all of the chocolates taste good and just some of them are so delicious that you just want to keep eating that one more and more. Does that make any sense? Anyway, enough. So everybody, thanks for watching if you stayed with me this long, and I'll be back again with another video when I have time. Not really sure what it's going to be yet. But anyway, thanks everyone. Take care. Stay safe. See you next time round. Bye.